Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper-Leitch. You are listening to the live broadcast of Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and, of course, on iHeartRadio. It is Monday, Healthy Mondays, and on Monday we'd like to put a spotlight on what this fabulous plant can do for our body, our spirit, and our minds and our souls. And I also want to give a thank you to KDK Distributors for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. My joint hosts today are going to be bringing on a great joint guest, and we're going to have a fun joint conversation. Remember, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world hit their pipes, their bongs, their vaporizers, and take Time for Hemp. If you're listening live this morning, please note we have started the program a second time. There were some technical problems at the beginning of the show. So we shut down and started up again, and we are live now here on the big broadcast with Mary Lynn Mathry and Al Byrne. Mary Lynn Mathry and Al Byrne, I pass this joint conversation over to you.
Thanks, Casper. I hope this comes in better, but we'll skip right to our guest here. I was introducing him. He's in St. Petersburg, Florida. He works at Eckerd College there in St. Petersburg. He's a cohort of ours, worked on the medical cannabis issue, the education issue with us now for, 6, 8, 10 years. He's a doctor of biology and or natural sciences. He's going to have to tell us one or the other. I don't know which one, but it's one or both. And I'd like to introduce, please, and don't forget you were muting your microphone, Greg. But I'd like to introduce, please, Greg Gerdeman. Good morning, Greg.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
We're doing good, and I know you're doing good, and I know you're babysitting your young daughter down there, and I
hope she doesn't provide too much interference in the background, but yeah, it's going well. I'm pretty much working as a stay-home dad this summer while I'm not teaching, and getting involved in some other things. You mentioned me being at Eckerd College. I'm a professor of biology at Eckerd College. My PhD is in pharmacology, and as you guys know, I've been studying. I started my PhD in the mid-'90s, and about the time that the endocannabinoid system was just getting discovered, and it was kind of the right place at the right time to investigate that, and I did, and have been hooked on that kind of field ever since. I guess I didn't go to Patients Out of Time till 2010. I've been going to the symposium of the International Cannabinoid Research Society for, my first one was in 99, and I've been studying the cannabinoid receptors and the targets of cannabis in the brain since about 96, I guess.
Well, I think we can definitely call you an expert then, and I knew you were a pharmacologist. I don't know why that's left my head, but so why? I'm always interested. You're in pharmacology. How'd you get there to begin with?
Well, so I've always had a lot of broad interests, but I went to school at a small college, Centre College in Kentucky, and really didn't know what I wanted to do. Always had kind of a philosophical bent, but have been a biologist and majored in biochemistry and molecular biology. But I really wanted to study the mind and the brain, and I guess I could make a long story out of it, but I ended up going to Vanderbilt University and winding up in the pharmacology program because I mostly got very interested in the cellular and molecular ways that drugs work, and in particular cellular mechanisms of learning and memory. So the lab I was working in, the lab of David Lovinger, who was there, was looking at how cells in the brain rearrange themselves and sort of models of how learning and memory occur. This is a big field in the area of neuroscience called synaptic plasticity, how synapses, connections between brain cells rearrange themselves. And we were looking at a really interesting subject of this kind of cellular function, these processes that go on in a brain network called the basal ganglia, that are really, some listeners may know, are really important for the control of movement, and is very relevant to Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, but also disorders of unwanted habits, including drug addiction, but also Tourette syndrome, OCD. All these kinds of phenomena involve the basal ganglia. And so we were looking at very small questions about how brain cells within this network communicate. And basically, we had some questions. It wasn't that's not necessarily a pharmacology question necessarily. I could have been a molecular physiology PhD, but I went into the pharmacology program. And we had some questions to ask about a messenger that we were looking for, a cellular signal that we thought was necessary. And I learned about the endocannabinoids from a lecture by Dr. Daniele Piamelli, who was visiting Vandy, and it just clicked with me that I was sure that was the secret link between how these neurons and these brain networks were communicating with one another and rearranging themselves. And that was really just a hunch, but it was right, and it was right at the right time. And that kind of, I guess I went beyond your question as to why I'm in pharmacology, but I went into a pharmacology department because of where I was at and the space I was at. It was a really good time to learn about how drugs work on a fine level and how neurotransmitter systems, including the endocannabinoids, work to accomplish brain function. How's that?
Okay. Wow. Well, look, Greg. Let's be clear to our listeners. I make this point a lot now, but I want to be clear again. What we're talking about is cannabis, and that is a plant. It is not a drug. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I think that the government just keeps saying cannabis or marijuana, the drug or something. It is not. It's a plant, and it's a very, it can be a vegetable. It's very nutritious. It's very healthy, and if you eat it raw, there's no pleasure other than it gives you good nutrition and doesn't taste too bad. But to get to the plant, so you're a drug brain nerd, and you've centered your research on this cannabis plant. So how about, it can't be, are you looking at the whole plant? You are, aren't you? And taking out pieces of it? Or how are we looking at this in how it relates to the brain and the brain receptors that we now have?
Well, really, to be most accurate about what I have done and am doing is I study the natural systems in our brains and our bodies by which the cannabinoids like THC work. So I haven't done much work in the lab I haven't done any work in the lab with the whole plant, because as you know, that's been exceedingly hard, or if not impossible, to do. I've looked at some synthetic drugs and how they influence learning and memory in animals in the lab. And I've looked at, for example, blockers of the receptors to see how they influence learning and memory, and these molecular processes. And I've definitely tried to infer from that some understanding of the cannabis plant and active compounds in there, but it's been very hard. And I've looked at THC and CBD out of a bottle, the synthetic compound that we purchased. But I've never looked at the whole plant really in the lab. Tried to at one point, but that's a different story we could go down.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, we all know that the government is a big roadblock in not only the research but in getting any cannabis at all right now out of the Mississippi farm, let alone with our cohorts at MAPS and University of Massachusetts have gone through just trying to grow a different strain. It's been absurd. So it doesn't strike me as well. You say, I've had trouble getting some research. Marilyn?
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking your work on the brain, obviously it grabbed you. And what would be your comment to folks? I mean, the discovery of the endocannabinoid system is so huge to the understanding of the human body. I mean, we're only beginning to understand it, but I mean, what's your thoughts on just the fact that so few people know about it, especially healthcare professionals? Just the lack of grabbing on and passing it out, getting this knowledge to all schools, etc.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really it's important and it's surprising, and it's a product it's just one product of the institutional bias, I think, that's gone into not just funding research, but the educational mission of colleges of medicine. That's changing, but even just 5, 6, 7 years ago, medical students weren't learning about the endogenous cannabinoid system. And yet I have a textbook for neuroscience that I teach undergraduates by professors at Brown University, are the authors. And in that textbook, they have a whole sort of couple pages on the endocannabinoids and state very assertively that they think it's the most exciting discovery in sort of neuroscience, synaptic biology in many years. So, my undergraduates are learning something about it. I mean, they're learning more about it than they would, maybe because I talk about it and take various case studies to talk about it. But it's important. And the endocannabinoids, the way that the systems that cannabis interacts with, is really important for what physiologists refer to as homeostasis, keeping the body within an optimal set range.
Greg, I got to interrupt you now. We're running a little bit over on the advertisement.
Well, that's all right. We're going to go ahead and take our breaks late because we started late. So you just keep right on talking, and we'll take our break. And we'll take our break in 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
It is a really, it's fine. It's a great thread that you're talking about there, Mary Lynn, about education, and that the endocannabinoids are really a system that our body uses to maintain optimal health in a way. And there's not much education about it. This comes up in popular conversation a lot right now in Florida because there's a lot going on with the ballot initiative here, the amendment that could be adopted here for medical marijuana. And I'm getting involved with discussions and helping to shape policy proposals about that. And you hear a lot of interest coming out and wanting to get involved. And many of them say that, well, what am I saying? I mean, I guess it's become very obvious that people don't know. Doctors don't know. Pharmacists are kind of, the lobbyists for the pharmacists are saying they understand it because they're saying that pharmacists should be in charge of things. But I've trained a number of pharmacists now, that have graduated and gone on to study pharmacy, and they don't learn about this stuff in pharmacy school. At least maybe they're starting to. So education is really important, and there is a lot of information out there, but it's a new model for informing people about healthcare because it's a lot of independent scholars that have been putting out work that you find online and in books and through places like Patients at a Time. That's where some of the best information is. When talking about what I do with endocannabinoids, some of what I've published lately, been involved with, are studies showing that with running and other kinds of endurance exercise, the body generates anandamide, one of the THC-like endocannabinoids. And we've done some studies to show that this exercise-induced elevation of anandamide is involved with the sense of well-being that runners get, which relates to what is called the runner's high. I'm starting to like to think of it more like a runner's joy, because the word high has so many confusing connotations. But exercise is promotional to health. Obviously that's almost a silly thing to say. It's so obvious. Exercise is good for health in many different ways, both your metabolic health, your cardiovascular health, and your mental health. And fine-tuning the body's cannabinoid system appears to be an important part of that. And our work is just one of a growing body of work from different people who've looked into that. So sort of, I don't know if I'm thinking of a music reference here. I think Donovan had a song saying the natural high is the best high in the world. There's a lot of natural highs out there and a lot of natural ways to promote your sense of well-being, alleviate pain in your body, and various therapeutic approaches that are not drug therapeutic approaches that I think boost the endocannabinoid system. And the cannabis plant is only just the most obvious one of those.
Al, you're on mute. If you're saying something, Al, you're on mute. That's okay. We'll go ahead and take a commercial break at this point and pay our bills. And then when we come back, we're going to listen to a song about how fantastic marijuana is. And then we'll pick up at this conversation where we left off here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
In need of a ganja vacation? Blaze away.
Don't criticize it.
Hotbox Jamaica. Chill. Relax and burn all day while watching the amazing ocean view. Listen to the birds. Bathe in the mineral waters of the Ganja River. Munch on tasty Jamaican Rasta food. Take a weed farm tour and hold a meditation. Book this amazing vacation for $420. Get the Sativa Special. 7 nights in Sativa dorms with ganja meals and airport transfer. Check us out at hotboxjamaica.com. That's hotboxjamaica.com. Hotbox Jamaica, a higher meditation vacation.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com, or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.
Hello, Mr. Officer, and how are you this evening? You say that you're smelling something that you don't find very pleasing. Could it be the fact that I've been smoking weed? Yes, indeed. Yes, sir, Mr. Officer, I've got my hands behind me. Please don't use any more pepper spray, 'cause that last shot was blinding. I can't see, and it's getting hard to breathe. I'm in custody. Oh, it's only a weed. 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 It's only a weed. Hello, Mom and Dad, it seems I've got a little problem. The policeman thinks I'm dealing, and it's prison time he's talking. Could you please call an attorney just for me? I'm in need. Hey, public defender, when's my case going to trial? 'Cause I couldn't make my bond, and I've been in jail a while and lost my job. All for a quarter pound of pot. Ain't that a crock? Oh, it's only a weed. 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 It's only a weed. Well, prison life is really hard, but when they let us in the yard, there's a man named Bubba looking out for me. He says that I'm pretty cute, but I feel like I'm being used. There's just got to be a better way, 'cause I'm not gay. Hey, future employer man, there's something I must tell you, 'cause when you run all my numbers, well, you're gonna find my record. I did time. Having marijuana is a crime. I wish they'd have an open mind. It's not a crime. Oh, it's only a weed. 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 It's only a weed.
And that was It's Only a Weed here at Time for Hemp. And it is only a weed, which is why we can't figure out why there are so many laws around this plant. Seriously, if you told me we outlawed poison ivy, I could almost make some sense of it. if there was a plant out there that was like the plant in the Little Shop of Horrors that screamed, "Feed me Seymour," every time you walked by it, and ate humans for lunch, I can say, well, yeah, it makes sense to outlaw that plant. But here we got a plant that's been outlawed by the humans in Congress in the United States that gives us wonderful things to help us humans live. It gives us fuel to run our cars, our homes, and cook with. We can make plastic and dynamite out of this. It gives us clothing to keep us warm and to travel in and to make suitcases out of and furniture covers with. And, it gives us food for people who are starving overseas. It helps stave off 2 or 3 different famines in history. And so when they outlawed this plant, they knew, the people who wrote this knew for a fact what they were doing was god-awful wrong. They knew that it made medication. They knew that it made fuel. They knew that it made fiber. That's why they outlawed it, because they were business people who also wanted to make those things out of petroleum. And when they outlawed marijuana, it was like Sears outlawing J.C. Penney's. And if you check the records, you'll find out that the very same year they outlawed marijuana, they introduced at the World's Fair synthetic fibers, synthetic fuels, and later synthetic medications made out of a chemistry set. And all those people who lobbied to outlaw marijuana went from being so poor that they couldn't buy a toilet to take a crap in to owning so much money that they would never know what to do if they had a chance to go out and spend it. Now, you follow the money, and then you research it, and then you come back and tell me why it needs to be outlawed. Because it doesn't. Here on Time for Hemp. Done with my rant.
Thank you. That was a good rant. That was very good. Just before we left here, Greg, I was, as an ex-jock, I was always told that when I went out and I was doing that hard exercise and I got that runner's high, which you call runner's joy, which I like your word far better, that wasn't endorphins, huh?
Well, there was studies that suggest endorphins, and endorphin is a word, that comes from a shortening of endogenous morphine, meaning something like morphine in your body. And they were given the name endorphins. There's something going on with endorphins, but for one thing, if endorphins are measured in the blood after exercise, that doesn't mean that they're getting into the brain, because they don't penetrate the brain very well. And that was a big flaw in that logic. So, you still hear people say that. You see it quite frequently, that it's endorphins. And there's some evidence that when you exercise, these molecules, endorphins, are actually generated by certain brain areas and stay within those brain areas and influence perception. But I think, that may be what causes a real, profound mental effect with exercise. Another obstacle to talking about the runner's high is that a lot of runners say, well, I never feel high. And in part it's because the word high to them, that makes them think of a Cheech and Chong movie or something. Like, I don't run until I'm like, oh, whoa, dude. And they only think in sort of cliches and stereotypes and not feeling good about life. And in the research that my colleagues and I did, that we published in the Journal of Experimental Biology in 2012, we looked at runners and also looked at dogs running and showed that these other animals that have evolved to be runners, with endurance exercise, anandamide goes up in the blood. But with the runners, we followed that up with a psychological questionnaire, a really well-validated psychological tool to study positive emotional affect or well-being, and found a really strong, really direct correlation between those runners who basically felt a lot better after their run than before the run. And in this multi-point questionnaire, the score came back to say these people feel good about life, about themselves, compared to before they exercised, those people had more anandamide. The more anandamide, the better the feel-good effect of the exercise. And that's why it makes more sense to talk about a runner's joy. It's the kind of sense of well-being that by far more runners experience. They don't necessarily get all stoned in their brain like they think of the word high, but a runner will finish a 10K run and be exhausted and worn out and sign up for the next run before they're even, back to their car, because they're like, yeah, I got to do this. This is so great. I feel good about myself. And that's something we think is more appropriate than calling it the runner's high, and also has a whole lot of possible utility for, people living their lives and making healthcare decisions. If exercise is, for example, a useful tool for people with depression, well, if we can look and measure anandamide and find out just what kinds of exercise elevates it more effectively, then that might be an informed decision to go towards people with certain mental illnesses and say, why don't you try this routine and see if it helps? And we have published some work along those lines, and I hope that other groups continue to take it further and really test them in people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that work, because it sounds very interesting, and thanks for clearing up that thing. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to change the subject to a cohort of ours, Dr. Sisley. We talked about Stu yesterday on our show yesterday, but I know you've had, first of all, I know you've been at the University of Arizona and you understand the situation. And folks, what this is this is a medical doctor who had been working for years to try and get to do a study with veterans and post-traumatic stress. And this was at the University of Arizona's medical school system. And this is a school with a good history of wanting to learn about medical cannabis, not necessarily about veterans, but about the medical uses of cannabis. And it's really surprising to us that the school has, apparently for political reasons. I mean, those of us that know Sue, no medicine, no learning, no education, think everything is wrong with this. So, Greg, what do you think? This was a study, folks. Again, I'm sorry, but it was a study that veterans in Arizona who were sanctioned by the state to use cannabis under their state rules, who were using cannabis for post-traumatic stress, would be looked at by Dr. Sisley, and that would become a study. She was getting permission through the federal government for years. It was delay. She recently got permission to do the study. If you do the study for the government, you got to get the medicine from NIDA. NIDA has always promised they will always have medicine available. All of a sudden, they don't have any medicine available. Oh, we got to grow some pot in the University of Mississippi for Dr. Sisley. Delay. And in the meantime, fire. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a real shame that the study's fallen apart, or at least seriously delayed. I really don't know I'm certainly not privy to the decisions about why she lost her job. The study of marijuana is so, the history, like you say, as everyone who's looked into it knows, is such a long history of political obstruction and interference with science, that it's a natural sort of, if not an assumption that it's a political firing, it certainly makes sense to say, well, prove it, because one's naturally going to suspect that for good reason. But it's a real shame that the study has fallen apart, because we see the situation nationwide, conversations about medical marijuana for years and years and years. The mantra by authorities is, well, we need more research. You can't just tell veterans that they should smoke pot for PTSD. We don't know that would work without research. And am I still on?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. You're still on. Absolutely.
Sorry, I heard
we
a
have not gone
sound.
to commercial break yet. We do that in 3 more minutes.
Okay. So you need more. You need more research, but the research can't happen, and this is just one more way that, wow, really? She went through this gauntlet of regulatory obstruction that's reserved for nothing other than the cannabis plant, and it ought to be championed as a real innovative thing she's doing. And look at the public support, and look at the demand for this kind of research. And I don't know to what extent the University of Arizona ever went to the bat with her, for her, when there was such terrible politics being played by people in Arizona to block the funding. But, they're not standing up for her now. They're sort of just unceremoniously firing her without much explanation. Working and talking to people in Florida about medical marijuana and the Amendment 2 that we're looking at and that voters can choose on. The opposition, one of the things they say over and over again is, this isn't how medicine is approved. You do clinical trials. In the 21st century, you don't just select medicine by voter choice. And, I think one has to look at this situation with Dr. Sisley, among others, and say, okay, that's not how medicine is put to patients, except for this one, because its history of medicine is practically unparalleled when it comes to any plant product, and there's no other option. I mean, when you've got 70-80% of a state population saying there should be medical marijuana, and research, for whatever reason, consistently always gets blocked, getting research to support it is great. It's important. But it can't be, you can't delay legalizing the medicine and making it available.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, Greg, is the issue that, as you said, it's an old medicine, and the old bottles of cannabis, many of them were guaranteed by the Pure Food and Drug Act of June 30, 1906. Our legislators took it out. So it would be like aspirin. It should have been a medication that was grandfathered in because it was known for its safety and efficacy way before the FDA came about.
Right.
Yeah.
Looks like it's time for a break, though.
It
so we'll
is
come back
right
with
on
Greg.
the money. You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. It is time for a break, and we're going to do that and then come back and pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
If you are in the Portland, Oregon area and are an OMMP cardholder, then come down to Nikki's Diggity Dank Market, Portland, Oregon's first and only weekly OMMP market, presented by the Alternative Wellness Center, located at 5241 Southeast 72nd Avenue, 2 blocks south of Foster Boulevard, close to public transportation, held every Sunday 10 a.m. till 7 p.m., connecting quality vendors with patients. Nikki's Diggity Dank Market also has a weekly raffle with products from every vendor, so come down to Nikki's Diggity Dank Market and have fun while connecting with quality vendors and getting great natural medicine. If you are a vendor and want a chance to connect with OMMP patients, you can check out their Facebook page at facebook.com/Alternative Wellness Center or call 971-888-4392. Be sure to register early because space is limited. Nikki's Diggity Dank Market.
In need of a ganja vacation? Blaze away.
Don't criticize it.
Hotbox Jamaica. Chill.
Legalize it, yeah.
Relax and burn all day while watching the amazing ocean view. Listen to the birds. Bathe in the mineral waters of the Ganja River. Munch on tasty Jamaican Rasta food. Take a weed farm tour and hold a meditation. Book this amazing vacation for $420. Get the Sativa Special. 7 nights in Sativa dorms with ganja meals and airport transfer. Check us out at hotboxjamaica.com. That's hotboxjamaica.com. Hotbox Jamaica, a higher meditation vacation.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com. Or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
Free? Did you say free? Free hemp? Free hemp? Free hemp video and audio? Free downloads of all the top artists, all the pot artists on planet Earth. Interviews with all the people making the movement, making the hemp movement. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp.
Yeah, stay alert with consciousness. Let the whole world know that it really is time for hemp. We are found at timeforhemp.com, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and of course, iHeartRadio. It is Monday, Healthy Mondays. And on Healthy Mondays, we put a spotlight on what this wonderful plant known as cannabis sativa, marijuana, hemp. There's about 500 different names you can pick and choose from. And whatever name you give it, there's going to be at least 15 people who say, oh, no, don't call it that. Well, I don't care. Here's what we have to call it. Illegal. And until you can call it a legal plant, that's what you need to focus on. Changing the laws, not the name. With that said, we're going to pass this microphone to my joint host here at Time for Hemp.
Thank you, Casper. Al Byrne back again for Patients at a Time. I'm here with Mary Lynn Mathry and Dr. Greg Gerdeman, but I want to remind you all that we are at www.medicalcannabis.com. You find out all kinds of information. There's good links. There's information. There's articles. There's advertisements. You can donate money and help us keep this whole thing going right there on the webpage. You can find out about our next conference, which will be in Florida in the spring of 2015, in March. We'll have plenty of information there for you pretty quick. And Dr. Gerdeman will be part of that faculty on that conference. and we'll have him right there in person, so you can see him and talk to him as well during the weekend. But Greg, one of the questions we ask all our experts is about the whole plant as opposed to what is now legal in Florida, for instance, which is the CBD only oil.
Right.
And and then if you could expand on that, and I know you're on a blue ribbon panel of some kind, expert panel in Florida, and maybe you could explain that process as best you know it to us, and what are we doing? CBD oil, blue
Sure.
ribbon panels. What's going on there?
Yeah, sort of the state of Florida. You're right. The law was just signed into effect to allow CBD oils, products, something that can't be smoked. In short, it's kind of a fiasco. The Department of Health just issued some draft rules and had comment on it. But it is, it's not whole plant medicine for sure. It's products from plants that have no more than 0.8% THC and no less than 10% CBD. Why 10% versus 9% is that big a deal? I'm not sure, but they came up with these numbers. The regulatory rules are such that they're going to allow 5 growers in the entire state of Florida that can only be picked from a list of people who have been in business, in the nursery business for 30 plus years within the state of Florida, who have to put down like $150,000 just to be considered, and then like a $5 million bond. So that the dynamics of it are very complicated. In other words, it means you've got to be a big money agribusiness person in Florida to get your foot in this door, who all have political connections, no doubt. But it's certainly not an open market model, and it's certainly not a whole plant medicine model. And I think it's an exciting step that will help people with, for example, childhood intractable epilepsy and situations where CBD is looking as a very promising medication. But that's nothing compared to the Amendment 2 that voters will be able to vote on November 4th. That is a constitutional amendment to allow medical marijuana more broadly as a plant medicine. And voters do need to go out and vote for that. I mean, polls suggest, and it needs 60% of the vote to pass as a constitutional amendment. And that can't be taken for granted, even though, some polls, there was a poll by Quinnipiac University a couple months ago that found 80% of Floridians, and according to their third-party poll, favored Amendment 2 for medical marijuana. That's enormous. I mean, I'm not sure you could get 80% of Floridians to agree that stop signs are a good idea. It's a huge sort of number, but the opposition will put out a lot of ads. They've got a lot of money from an out-of-state Nevada casino billionaire. So there'll be an ad blitz, and people need to realize that just because this CBD product bill has become law, it does not mean medical marijuana is legal, and the Amendment 2 is what that will do. But the rules for how that will be implemented, nobody knows. If it becomes law, the legislature and the Department of Health will start dealing about it, considering it then. The Blue Ribbon Panel you mentioned is a commission of a nonprofit group called Florida for Care that invited me into a commission that we are going to begin our work this week, actually, and just start drafting policy. Policy better than the CBD rule that will have more open market forces discerning who can grow. And I have no idea how that will turn out. But policies about how it will be implemented, who can get it, when, how it will be taken into effect. There's a lot of work to be done. But this Florida for Care Commission, I think, is it's a new way of approaching things, because it includes some very high-level former legislators, including one of the authors of the amendment, John Mills, who was the former state speaker of the House, and a high-level former Senate Republican, the sheriff of Flagler County, and a lot of what's unique and special is patient advocates as well, healthcare experts like myself and a couple of physicians, and patients like Robert and Kathy Jordan, Irv Rosenfeld. They'll have a voice in discussing these rules and what should be important as well. And while, a sheriff or a Republican who opposes medical marijuana, they wouldn't necessarily draft rules like I would. But if something is going to actually get through and become real and put plants in the ground to start being available for patients and physicians, then you have to, in the state of Florida, you've got to bring these different players to the table. And we can work this fall and the rest of this summer to draft out something that will work, that can work. It'll be vetted all the way along. Every step of the way will be vetted by people that are basically in the halls of power in Florida, people who are legislators and their aides and people at the Department of Health and Commerce, to see what will be doable, with the hopes that when the next governor is elected, that we will have a policy that can become their agenda if they really care to enact the will of the people in a timely way. Now, the commission is going to be working. Again, it's Florida for Care. If you want to learn about it, it's just floridaforcare.org. And that's Florida FOR Care. It is not United for Care. It is a separate organization. And we're going to be drafting out a proposal and then have a series of about 4 meetings later in the fall. Those dates haven't been announced yet, but they'll be at different points in the state. It will be announced at floridaforcare.org. Hopefully the media will also cover it. When we get these proposals, these policy proposals, we'll be giving events for public comment and feedback. And if the session with the CBD rule is any indication, I'm sure lobbyists of all different industries will be coming out to try and get a piece of the pie, because for all the talk about marijuana being dangerous, everybody sure wants to cash in on it when it is going to become legal. I shouldn't end on a critical note like that. It's a really exciting thing. I feel privileged to be invited into it. Our work will be pretty much for waste if the amendment doesn't pass. But I think there's a really strong possibility of Amendment 2 passing if people do not take the vote for granted and go out and vote for it.
That is a very important statement. Anyone in Florida listening to this, you really have to exercise your right and vote. If you support it and don't go to the polls, your support does nothing to further the, getting it available. And again,
60%
people wake up.
is a lot.
Yeah. 60, isn't it 61% or 60? 60
I think if it tops 60%, and again, all the polls indicate that number of Floridians favor it. So it should come to be. It should. If we had the vote today and everybody of all sides came out to vote, there's no doubt that medical marijuana would become a reality, with rules still needing to be drafting, which is what the Florida for Care Commission is going to try to help with. Obviously, what we do will not become law unless it's adopted, but that's why we're bringing in a diverse group of nonpartisan people. But the vote isn't tomorrow.
Greg.
It's November 5th.
I really appreciate you coming on board with us and your very interesting update here on what's going on in Florida. I hope they pay attention to you people. I couldn't agree more. I'm glad that there's a sheriff there. I'm glad that there's different forces at play, because this is all about citizens. And I mean, everybody's got to participate, and everybody's got to be happy in this decision. But I think, like you and I and Mary Lynn understand, you got 80% of the population that want this, and what we're dealing with is a marvelous medical breakthrough, and folks, guys like Greg Gerdeman, if this law was passed, would be just alive with research and learn so much more. So, we urge you to pay attention to Dr. Gerdeman and that commission and help him pass this law. And Greg, thank you, sir. And we talked over the break, guys, and Dr. Greg will come back and see us again real soon, and we'll talk about cannabis and addiction. Thank you, Greg.
Great. Take care.
Thank you. And folks, we're going to leave in a minute too and give the air back to Casper, but we want to remind you that we're on the air every Sunday and every Monday on Time for Hemp, iCare Radio, iHeart Radio. Maybe they should have called it iCare Radio, but anyway, they didn't. It's iHeart Radio, and we're there at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. On Sundays, we generally talk to patients and their caregivers. And on Mondays like today, we talk to experts like Dr. Greg Gerdeman. So please pay attention to what we do here. All of these shows are archived. You can pass them around. You can recommend them to people. That's why they're archived. We want you to reuse them, to let people know they're there to be listened to. Different people talk about different ailments like the doctor did today. And they're there on Time for Hemp. Just search us out as hosts and search out our archives. And until next Sunday, same time, take care.
And I want to remind tomorrow that it is Canada Day with KDK distributor Kelly Kristen as our joint host. On Wednesday, it's Law Enforcement Against Prohibition Day here on the big broadcast, Leap Day with joint host Peter Chris. And then on Thursdays, Paul Stanford sits down as the joint host, and we talk about what's going on across the United States. And on Fridays, we roll into a small town somewhere on the planet with Michael Krawitz and put a spotlight on a hardworking activist in a small town doing big work on Small Town Fridays. We are also not just a small little 1-hour broadcast anymore, 5 days a week. We are a group of people, a team, as you should hear, of hardworking activists dedicated to ending the prohibition failed policies that are hurting lives all around the world. We are producing over 70 hours a week of original content about the need to end prohibition. So let your friends know about the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network, because like a good joint, we are best when shared with friends. And with that said, remember, the next time you hear me, that's right, you'll know that it's time for hemp.